The massive Imperial flagship Dominion emerged from hyperspace near the edge of Earth's solar system. Admiral Vex stood on the command bridge, his four eyes narrowing as he studied the blue-green planet on the main screen. "Primitive," he muttered, noting the satellites orbiting the world and the small colony on its moon. Another easy addition to the Empire. In his 200 years serving the Galactic Empire, Vex had overseen 57 first contacts. 57 species now served the Empire. Some had resisted briefly, but all eventually bowed to Imperial might. These humans would be no different. "Send the standard greeting package," Vex ordered. "Let's see how quickly they surrender." The Empire had perfected this routine. First, demonstrate overwhelming power. Then, offer terms that seemed generous but ensured complete submission. It always worked. 3 days later, Vex wasn't smiling anymore. "They've increased their military readiness," he growled at his intelligence officer. "After our peaceful approach." Officer Kell nodded nervously. "Yes, Admiral. They've moved their orbital defense platforms and recalled their deep space vessels. Their communications show they're debating our intentions." "Caution is not submission," Vex said, his voice growing cold. "Perhaps they need a demonstration." The Imperial Council had clear protocols for species that showed resistance. A small display of force usually brought them to their knees. "Target their outpost on the Red Planet," Vex ordered. "Minimal casualties, maximum impact." The beam from the Dominion struck the Mars colony with surgical precision. Only the main power plant was destroyed. But the message was clear: submit or face destruction. What happened next shocked the entire Imperial command. Rather than opening diplomatic channels to discuss surrender terms, Earth went silent. For 24 hours, no response came. The Empire detected only encrypted communications and increased military activity. "This is unusual," Kell noted, reviewing the data. "Most species panic after a demonstration." Then the humans responded, not with fear, but with unified defiance. A single message was broadcast across all frequencies: "Your unprovoked attack on our Mars colony has resulted in the deaths of 18 civilians. The nations of Earth unanimously reject any diplomatic relations with governments that target non-combatants. You have 24 hours to withdraw from our solar system or face the consequences." Laughter erupted on the Dominion's bridge. "Consequences?" Commander Jax chuckled. "Their most advanced ships couldn't even scratch our shields." Admiral Vex wasn't laughing. In 57 first contacts, no species had ever responded with threats after a demonstration. They always begged for terms. "Send the Emperor's message," Vex ordered. "Full subjugation demands, non-negotiable." The message was simple. Earth would surrender all military assets except Imperial governors and provide resources and troops to the Empire. In return, they would receive Imperial protection and technology. The humans responded with a single word: no. What followed stunned the Imperial forces. Rather than cowering, Earth's previously competing nations united overnight. Their ships, though technologically inferior, formed defensive positions. Their leaders issued a formal declaration of war against the Galactic Empire, something no species had dared to do in over 1,000 years. "This is unprecedented," Kell whispered, analyzing the human response. "They know they can't win, yet they choose to fight." Vex frowned deeply. "Launch a full attack on their moon base. Show them the price of defiance." As Imperial warships moved into position, Vex couldn't know he had just made the greatest mistake in Imperial history. He couldn't know that humans were different from every species the Empire had encountered. He couldn't know that humans had something the galaxy had never seen before. He couldn't know that this would be remembered as the day the mighty Galactic Empire began to fall. The devastation of Earth's lunar colony was swift and complete. Imperial warships reduced the dome structures to rubble in less than an hour, killing all 3,000 colonists. Admiral Vex watched the explosions with cold satisfaction. "Send images to Earth," he ordered. "Now they will understand the futility of resistance." But Earth's response was not what he expected. Instead of calls for peace, the humans launched every available ship toward the Imperial fleet. Their vessels were primitive by Imperial standards, little more than metal cans with engines, yet they came without hesitation. They're sacrificing themselves. Commander Jax asked in disbelief as human ships were destroyed one after another. What the Empire didn't immediately understand was that these suicide runs were merely a distraction. While Imperial forces focused on the incoming ships, a smaller human vessel slipped past their defenses and captured detailed scans of Imperial technology before jumping away. Within weeks, the Empire had secured control of Mars, Venus, and the asteroid belt. Admiral Vex sent daily reports of victory to the Imperial Council. The humans fought bravely but were hopelessly outmatched. Their weapons barely affect our shields, Vex reported. Total conquest should be complete within 3 standard months. On Earth, things looked grim. Admiral Thorne, commander of Earth's unified defense forces, stood in the underground war room beneath the ruins of Geneva. Holographic displays showed Imperial ships advancing steadily toward Earth. "We can't match their firepower," General Blake said. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." "Then we don't match it," Thorne replied. "We find its weaknesses." The data from the suicide scanning mission had revealed something interesting. Imperial ships relied heavily on a specific frequency for their shield modulation. It wasn't much, but it was something. Meanwhile, the Empire continued its conquest. They established a major base on Jupiter's moon Ganymede and began stripping the outer planets for resources. The Imperial Council was already discussing how to divide Earth once it was conquered. "These humans will make excellent labor forces," High Counselor Drav noted, "though they seem unusually stubborn." Only Intelligence Officer Kell expressed concern. "Our historical records show no species has ever continued fighting after such losses. Yet the humans keep sending ships, even when they know they will be destroyed. They're learning with each encounter." His warnings went unheeded. The Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds. One more backward planet posed no real threat. Admiral Vex prepared for the final push toward Earth. His fleet of 200 warships would overwhelm the remaining human defenses. Victory was assured. Then came the Battle of Europa. Imperial forces approached Jupiter's ice-covered moon, expecting minimal resistance. Instead, they found 50 human ships waiting. These vessels looked different, modified with what appeared to be crude attempts to mimic Imperial technology. "Pathetic," Vex said with a laugh. "They think they can copy our advanced systems." The human ships opened fire. To everyone's shock, their weapons penetrated Imperial shields. 3 Imperial destroyers exploded before they could respond. "Impossible," Vex shouted. "How are they doing this?" The battle lasted hours instead of minutes. When it ended, the Empire had still won, but at a cost of 17 ships. 17 ships lost to a species that shouldn't have been able to scratch their paint. Back on Earth, Admiral Thorne received the news with grim satisfaction. "It worked," he told his officers. "The modified frequency disruptors worked." "We still lost all 50 ships," General Blake reminded him. "Yes," Thorne agreed, "but now we know we can hurt them. And that's just the beginning." In his private quarters, Admiral Vex reviewed the battle footage with growing concern. These humans had somehow adapted Imperial technology in weeks, not the centuries it should have taken. For the first time, he felt something unfamiliar: doubt. The Empire was still winning, but something was changing. The assault on Europa should have been a minor setback for the Empire. Instead, it marked the beginning of a disturbing trend. Over the next 3 months, Imperial losses mounted at an alarming rate. Admiral Vex paced the bridge of the Dominion, his clawed hands clasped behind his back. "How?" he demanded, slamming his fist on a console. "How are they adapting so quickly?" Officer Kell displayed the latest battle data. "The humans are using guerrilla tactics, Admiral. They attack, then disappear before we can respond. They're targeting supply ships rather than warships, and they're sharing technology across their forces. What Vex couldn't understand was the speed of human adaptation. Imperial intelligence had studied Earth's history and found that humans had spent thousands of years fighting each other. This had given them something no other species possessed, an instinct for warfare that went beyond technology. The Empire's next target was the Mars colony, which humans had reinforced after the initial attacks. The Imperial fleet arrived expecting another easy victory. They were wrong. Captain Reed, a former mining engineer, had spent weeks studying the wreckage of destroyed Imperial ships. She noticed something nobody else had. The Empire's sensors couldn't penetrate certain mineral combinations found in Martian rock. When the Imperial fleet arrived, they detected only a small human presence. Commander Jax, eager to please Admiral Vex, ordered an immediate landing rather than orbital bombardment. "The humans are broken," he declared. "Let's take this colony intact for the Emperor." The moment Imperial troops landed, human forces emerged from hidden bunkers built into the Martian landscape. They attacked using modified versions of Imperial weapons, which they had reverse-engineered from battlefield salvage. Commander Jax died in the first wave of attacks. By the time the Empire could organize a retreat, they had lost 3,000 troops and 5 landing ships. For the first time in the war, humans had achieved a total victory. News of the Mars defeat reached the Imperial capital, causing shock among the council members. The Emperor himself demanded answers. How could primitive humans defeat our elite forces? He roared at the holographic image of Admiral Vex. They don't fight like any species we've encountered," Vex stammered. "They adapt, they improvise. They don't follow logical battle patterns." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Are you saying you cannot defeat them?" "No, Your Magnificence. I'm saying they require different strategies." On Earth, Admiral Thorne addressed the United Earth Council. The room was filled with leaders from every nation, now working together against the external threat. "Mars is ours again," he announced to cheers. "But this is just the beginning. The Empire still outmatches us in numbers and technology, but not in determination," added Dr. Morgan, head of the Adaptive Technology Division. She displayed holographic images of new ship designs. "We've integrated captured Imperial tech with our own systems. Their predictable battle algorithms are now their greatest weakness." The war had been raging for 6 months. What the Empire had expected to be a quick conquest had turned into a grinding conflict. And worse, for the first time in memory, the mighty Empire was on the defensive. In his private chambers, Admiral Vex received a secure transmission from Officer Kell. "Admiral, I've completed my analysis of human warfare," Kell said, his voice tight with concern. "There's something you need to know. Humans don't just fight to win. They fight to improve. Each battle teaches them. Each loss makes them stronger." "What are you saying, Kell?" "I'm saying the longer we fight them, the more dangerous they become." Kell paused, and the reports from our border worlds suggest that news of human resistance is spreading. Other subjugated species are watching. Vex felt cold dread settle in his stomach. The Empire had always relied on fear and overwhelming force. If that failed against humans, if humans showed the galaxy that the Empire could bleed, everything would change. And unknown to Vex, change was already coming faster than anyone could imagine. 1 year into the war, Earth had transformed beyond recognition. Former enemies worked side by side. Factories that once built luxury items now produced weapons and ships. Every human on the planet understood one simple truth: unite or die. In the depths of Mount Cheyenne, Dr. Morgan hunched over a workbench, surrounded by parts from captured Imperial technology. Dark circles under her eyes showed she hadn't slept in days. "Is it ready?" Admiral Thorne asked, entering the secure lab. Dr. Morgan nodded, gesturing to what looked like a small silver disk. "We call it the Disruptor. It emits a pulse that temporarily shuts down Imperial navigation systems. And they can't block it. Not yet. Their tech relies on quantum predictability. We've introduced deliberate chaos into the signal pattern. She smiled tiredly. Humans are good at chaos. Across the solar system, humans had retaken Mars, Venus, and several key asteroid bases. But these were just the opening moves in Admiral Thorne's larger strategy. Operation Hornet's Nest begins tomorrow, he told the United Earth Council. On the display behind him, a map showed Imperial territory extending across thousands of star systems. We've identified their supply lines and communication hubs. We won't try to match their fleet strength. Instead, we'll hit them where they're vulnerable. The plan was bold to the point of insanity. Small, fast human ships would jump deep into Imperial space, strike critical targets, and disappear before the Empire could respond. The humans called these ships wasps. They couldn't survive a direct fight, but their sting was deadly. The first wave of attacks caught the Empire completely by surprise. 20 communication relays destroyed. 7 supply depots raided. 3 shipyards damaged. The wasps vanished after each attack, leaving confusion in their wake. On the Imperial capital world, the Emperor summoned his war council. Admiral Vex has failed, he declared to the assembled officials. His fleet remains bogged down in the human solar system while they attack our territory with impunity. High Commander Rax stepped forward. The humans are using stolen jump technology, Your Magnificence. Their ships are crude but effective, and they're targeting our infrastructure rather than engaging our fleets. You speak as if you admire them, the Emperor said dangerously. Rax bowed low. I respect their tactical innovation, nothing more. They fight. Differently. Differently or not, they must be crushed. The Empire cannot afford to show weakness. The Emperor's 4 eyes narrowed. Execute Admiral Vex for his failures. Promote Officer Kell to take his place. Perhaps someone who understands these humans can defeat them. Meanwhile, the human counteroffensive expanded. Each successful raid provided more captured technology. Dr. Morgan and her team worked tirelessly to integrate it with human systems. The new Admiral Kell stared at reports from across Imperial space with growing dread. The humans weren't just attacking. They were inspiring others. On 3 recently conquered worlds, local species had risen up against Imperial forces. They were using human tactics, hit and run, sabotage, ambushes. They've turned our conquest model against us, Kell explained to the Imperial Council. We've always relied on overwhelming force and fear. The humans have shown that we can be hurt, that we can be beaten. Nonsense, snapped Councillor Draff. These are isolated incidents. Our fleet still outnumbers the humans 1,000 to 1. Numbers meant nothing if we cannot bring them to bear, Kell replied. The humans strike where we are weak, then vanish, and now they're teaching others to do the same. For the first time in centuries, the Imperial Council faced a possibility they had never considered: defeat, not just against humans, but across their vast empire of subjugated worlds. On Earth, Admiral Thorne unveiled the next phase of Operation Hornet's Nest. The display showed hundreds of targets deep in Imperial space. They expected us to cower in fear, he told his captains. Instead, we'll take the fight to their doorstep, and we won't be going alone. The revolution against the mighty empire had begun, and humans were leading the charge. News travels slowly across a galactic empire, but it travels nonetheless. Stories of human resistance spread from world to world, system to system, carried by traders, soldiers, and servants. These weren't just tales of battles won. They were stories of hope. On Krell, a swamp world conquered by the Empire 3 centuries ago, the indigenous people gathered in secret underground caverns. The humans defeated an Imperial battle group, whispered Elder Mox, his webbed hands trembling with excitement. They used the Empire's own weapons against them. How? Asked a younger Krellian. The Empire's technology is locked against unauthorized use. The humans broke the locks. They change things, make them work differently. Elder Mox leaned forward. and they've sent us plans to do the same. Similar meetings occurred across 100 worlds. Species that had lived under imperial rule for generations suddenly saw possibility where before there had been only resignation. Admiral Kell, newly promoted after Vex's execution, reported the disturbing trend to the Emperor. Rebellions have broken out in the Krell, Tanax, and Vorlon systems, he said, his voice calm despite the dire news. All are using tactics similar to the humans: small strikes, then retreat, targeting communication and supply. The Emperor's face darkened. Crush them. Make examples of their leaders. We've tried, Your Magnificence, but by the time our forces arrive, the rebels have vanished. They're communicating using modified human encryption that our systems can't break. For the first time in his 300-year reign, the Emperor felt fear. Not of humans alone. They were still confined mostly to one solar system, but of what they represented: change, adaptation, unpredictability. Meanwhile, human diplomatic vessels made covert contact with rebelling worlds. Admiral Thorne had realized that humanity couldn't defeat the Empire alone, but with allies throughout imperial space, victory became possible. On the former mining world of Tanax, human Captain Lee met with rebel leader Grex. The meeting took place in an abandoned mine shaft, far from imperial sensors. "We can provide encryption technology and weapon designs," Lee explained. "In return, we need information about imperial fleet movements." Grex, a large insectoid being, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Why help us? Our species have never met before this war." "Because we fight for the same thing," Lee replied. "Freedom. And because we're stronger together than apart." The alliance grew. Species that had hated each other for millennia now found common cause against the Empire. Humans served as both the spark and the glue of this unlikely coalition. On the imperial capital, the council convened an emergency session. "We must negotiate with the humans," urged Councillor Trill, the oldest member. "This spreading rebellion threatens the core worlds now." "Negotiate with primitives," Councillor Drav scoffed. "It would show weakness." "We executed Admiral Vex for failure," Trill reminded them. "His replacement reports the same problems. Perhaps the failure is not in our commanders, but in our understanding of these humans." The debate raged for days while reports of new rebellions continued to arrive. Imperial forces were stretched thin, responding to attacks across thousands of light years. Admiral Kell studied human history obsessively, searching for insights. What he found disturbed him greatly. "Humans have fought wars constantly throughout their history," he told his officers, "not just against external enemies, but against themselves. They've developed countless strategies, weapons, and tactics. War is embedded in their culture in a way we've never seen before." One of his commanders frowned. "Are you saying they're naturally more violent than other species?" "No," Kell replied. "I'm saying they're more experienced. We fight to maintain order. They fight to survive. And that makes them dangerous in ways we never anticipated." The Emperor finally reached a decision. "Recall ships from pacified sectors. Consolidate our forces. We will crush these humans once and for all. And with them, this wave of rebellion." But as Imperial ships pulled back from outlying systems to form a massive attack fleet, they left power vacuums that rebel forces quickly filled. The Empire was shrinking for the first time in a millennium. The tide was turning. And every day, more ships, human and alien alike, gathered at the designated coordinates Admiral Thorne had established. Together, they prepared for the greatest battle the galaxy had ever seen. The massive Allied fleet assembled at the edge of the Arcturus system, just beyond Imperial sensor range. Over 3,000 ships of various sizes and designs waited in formation. At the center, the human flagship Defiance served as the command center. Admiral Thorne stood on the bridge, watching as representatives from 27 formerly subjugated species filed into the war room. 2 years of fighting had aged him visibly. Gray streaked his once dark hair, and deep lines marked his face. "This is our moment," he told the gathered leaders. The Empire has pulled back to defend its core worlds. They've assembled the largest fleet in their history near the capital. He gestured to the holographic display showing Imperial fleet positions. They expect us to be intimidated by their numbers. Thorn continued. They still don't understand how we think. Grex, the Tanaxian rebel, clicked his mandibles. Their fleet outnumbers ours 3-1, Admiral. Even with our combined forces. Numbers aren't everything, interrupted Captain Reed, the hero of Mars. We're not fighting their way. We're fighting our way. The plan they unveiled was audacious. While the main Allied fleet engaged the Imperial Armada head-on, smaller strike teams would slip through the chaos to target the Imperial capital itself. Not to destroy it, but to capture the Emperor. On the Imperial capital world, the Emperor received troubling intelligence. The humans have united with the rebel species, reported Admiral Kell. Our sources indicate they plan to attack the core worlds directly. Let them come, the Emperor said dismissively. Our combined fleet will crush them. But Admiral Kell wasn't reassured. Your Magnificence, I've completed my study of human warfare. Their history contains something we've never encountered before. They call it unconditional surrender. Explain. Most species, including our own, fight until a favorable compromise can be reached. Humans sometimes fight until their enemy is completely defeated. No terms, no negotiation. They call it total war. And based on our treatment of their colonies, I believe that's what they're waging against us. The Emperor's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. You suggest these primitives will accept nothing less than our complete defeat. I believe they want to end our empire as it currently exists. Your Magnificence. For the first time, the Emperor felt genuine concern. He had ruled for centuries, overseeing the conquest of hundreds of worlds. The idea that it could all end because of one insignificant planet was unthinkable. Send a message to their Admiral Thorn, he ordered. Offer terms. Earth can remain independent if they abandon their allies. The message reached the Defiance just as the Allied fleet prepared to jump to the Imperial capital. Admiral Thorn read it aloud to the assembled alien leaders. When he finished, the room fell silent. They fear us, said Elder Mox of the Krellians. The Empire has never offered terms before battle. They're trying to divide us, Thorn replied. Typical Imperial strategy. Isolate and conquer. His response to the Emperor was brief. We offer our terms. Independence for Earth and all Allied worlds. The Empire will withdraw from these systems immediately. The current Imperial leadership will stand trial for war crimes. You have 12 hours to respond. The Emperor's rage upon receiving this message was legendary. Palace servants fled as he destroyed priceless artifacts in his fury. They dare dictate terms to me, he roared. Launch the fleet. Destroy them all. The Imperial fleet moved into defensive positions around the capital system. 9,000 warships, the mightiest armada ever assembled, prepared to crush the human-led rebellion once and for all. Admiral Kell took his position on the command ship, but doubt gnawed at him. The humans had consistently defied Imperial expectations. What surprises did they have planned this time? He soon got his answer as the Allied fleet dropped out of hyperspace, not in the expected formation, but scattered across the system in small, coordinated groups. Before the Imperial fleet could regroup, the attackers struck from multiple directions simultaneously. The Battle of Arcturus had begun, and with it, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The Battle of Arcturus lasted 3 days. Imperial warships filled the space around the capital planet, their weapons blazing against the smaller Allied fleet. By all conventional metrics, the Empire should have won easily. But humans don't fight conventionally. Admiral Thorn had divided the Allied forces into hundreds of small battle groups, each with specific targets and missions. While Imperial commanders tried to coordinate their massive fleet using standard battle formations, the Allies struck from unexpected vectors, disappeared, then reappeared elsewhere. On the second day, Admiral Kell realized the truth. They're not trying to destroy our fleet, he told his officers. "They're hurting us, creating gaps in our defensive line." His realization came too late. A small group of stealth ships, developed by Dr. Morgan using hybrid human Imperial technology, slipped through the Empire's defenses. They carried elite troops from a dozen species, led by Captain Reed. While the space battle raged overhead, Reed's team infiltrated the Imperial Palace. Their target, the Emperor himself. Impossible. The Emperor roared when alarms blared throughout the palace. How did they reach the surface? His guards rushed him toward a secret escape tunnel, but they were intercepted in the throne room. Reed's strike team had memorized the palace layout using intelligence gathered from former servants. "Emperor of the Galactic Empire," Reed announced, weapon raised, "you are hereby placed under arrest for crimes against sentient beings." For the first time in 3 centuries, the Emperor faced someone who wasn't afraid of him. Above the planet, Admiral Kell watched in horror as the palace defenses went offline. Then came the transmission that changed everything. The Emperor, under guard, ordering all Imperial forces to stand down. The order was met with disbelief, then confusion, then finally, compliance. Across the battlefield, Imperial ships powered down their weapons. The fighting stopped. Admiral Thorne arrived on the capital planet 6 hours later. He walked through the Imperial Palace, now guarded by Allied troops, and entered the throne room where the Emperor waited. "You fought, unlike any species we have encountered," the Emperor said, his voice subdued. "Why?" "Because we had to," Thorne replied simply. "You left us no choice. We offered you the same terms as all others. Submit and live under our rule." Thorne shook his head. "Humans don't accept those terms. We never have throughout our history. We fight for our freedom, no matter the odds." The formal surrender was broadcast across the Empire. The Emperor, stripped of his regalia, signed the document establishing the new Galactic Confederation. Earth and its allies would govern together, with each species maintaining independence while sharing common defense and trade. In the aftermath, Admiral Kell was one of the few Imperial officers not removed from command. His understanding of humans had impressed Admiral Thorne, who offered him a position in the new Confederation fleet. Before accepting, Kell requested permission to send one final message as an Imperial officer. Thorne agreed. The broadcast reached every corner of the former Empire. Kell stood straight, his uniform still bearing Imperial insignia, as he delivered what would become known as the warning to run. To all remaining Imperial forces and worlds not yet part of the Confederation, he began, his voice solemn. "I speak to you with urgent counsel gained through bitter experience. If you detect humans approaching your system, you have exactly 2 options. Welcome them as friends or run. There is no third option." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I have studied these beings called humans. They do not fight like us. They do not think like us. When threatened, they do not negotiate like us. For thousands of years, they fought among themselves, developing skills we cannot match. They adapt, they improvise, and they never, ever stop." His final words became legendary. The empire that conquered 1,000 worlds was defeated by beings from a single planet. Remember this warning. Welcome them as friends or run. For if you choose to fight humans, you will lose everything, as we did. 5 years later, the former emperor sat in his comfortable exile on a distant world. He had spent his days studying human history, finally understanding what Kell had tried to warn him about. On his desk lay an ancient human military text. The emperor had circled a passage that explained everything. War is not about who's right. It's about who's left. The humans had been left, and the galaxy would never be the same.